So every single resident alien of the U.S. must file a U.S. tax return if their global income is above their filing threshold requirements. So what is actually a resident alien of the U.S.? It's a national of the U.S., it's a green card holder of the U.S., and it's somebody meeting the substantial presence test. Many green card holders and citizens living abroad find out the hard way that they must continue to file and report worldwide income. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to pay U.S. tax. That's where we come in. But they must be compliant. So we do field a lot of calls daily from American citizens and green card holders overseas, outside the U.S., that were never aware of their filing obligations. Of course, I would say that most foreign nationals here in the U.S. meeting that substantial presence test are well aware of their filing obligations, because that's probably the first thing that they research before they decide to move to the United States. But there are millions of delinquent filers outside the United States. So what happens if they are delinquent? They should avail themselves of the Streamlined Program, both the domestic and the offshore foreign program, assuming, of course, they're not willful. If an individual is delinquent and they're not willful, and the definition of willful is really kind of the same thing between fraud and negligence, gross negligence, vis-a-vis intent to deceive. So if a taxpayer is not willful because they had no intention of deceiving the IRS, and by the way, that's a very simple definition of not willful. It is set on court precedents. But generally speaking, the majority of people that contact us really are non-willful, because they knew they had a filing requirement, they got lazy, or they didn't know, or a friend told them, or they read about it. But most people that contact us really did not deliberately go out of their way to avoid filing. But if they're not willful, the IRS provides a mechanism which started in September of 2012 and was modified on June 18th of 2014, whereby the taxpayer must, if they're not willful and delinquent of more than 3 years, file using either the domestic Streamlined Program or the Offshore foreign program, and in either case must file the last 3 years of closed tax returns. Now, in the case of a foreign offshore program, that could be an amended filing. But in the case of the domestic program, it must be an amended filing. So they must have filed prior. So you can only amend in the domestic scenario. But in the foreign scenario, it could be an original filing or an amended filing. So in either case, you file the last 3 years of closed returns, so where the tax year has closed, after the last extension has been granted. The last 6 years of Form 114, the foreign bank account and other reporting, and a certification. In the foreign offshore Streamlined Program, it's certification 14653, and in the domestic, it's Form 14654. In either case, the facts of each taxpayer must be set out appropriately in a written report explaining why that taxpayer, and perhaps their spouse, is not willful. And there is a 20-point analysis that must be hit in that custom-tailored report for that client, failing which that streamlined application can and will be rejected. In fact, we hear stories that upwards of 50% of all streamlined applications are in fact rejected. And in that case, the taxpayer is subjected to a full-blown audit. So it is so important, given the fact that these streamlined applications go to a special division of the IRS, DOJ, Department of Justice in Florida, that individuals that are delinquent really spare no cost to hire the best to perform and complete these streamlined procedures, as well that they make sure that they fully investigate the professional background of the individuals performing this streamlined process and ask important questions like, is this individual a CPA? Do they specialize in global mobility tax services? How many streamlines have they done in the past? And what is their success rate? Because those are all super relevant questions for the taxpayer to determine prior to hiring a professional to perform these services. So the Streamline, once completed, the 3 years of tax returns, the 6 years of FBAR's Form 114, and that certification, be it on either Form 14653 in the case of foreign, or 14654 in the case of domestic, are then paper mailed to the IRS. The FBARs are electronically filed, and we include copies of those with the returns that go to that special address in Florida. Streamline is not an option. If you're delinquent, you must use Streamline. And if you try to quiet disclose without using Streamline, again, you could be subject to a full-blown audit. People that are currently under civil examination are not eligible for Streamline. And of course, again, you must be non-willful. But I think that Streamline is a super powerful tool because it is a penalty-free regime, with the exception of the domestic program, where there is a Title 26 5% penalty on the highest balance of the last 6 years of FBARs. But still, the late filing penalty and the late payment penalty are extinguished for Streamline. So it is a super powerful program that I think is a gift to taxpayers who are delinquent. And there have been rumors for years that the IRS will, at some point, withdraw the Streamline program. So my advice to anybody who's delinquent out there is take advantage of it as soon as possible, get up to date, and hire nothing but the best to perform the Streamline program.